Story 1. The Room That Never Was. After a grueling day on the road, a weary traveler checks into a small, isolated motel off a forgotten highway. The motel looks like it hasn't been updated since the 1970s, with faded wallpaper peeling off the walls and a flickering neon sign casting eerie shadows in the parking lot. At the front desk, the traveler is greeted by an unnerving man with cold, unblinking eyes. The man hands over the key to room 213 with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. When the traveler arrives at room 213, they find a door leading to what appears to be a storage closet filled with old, broken furniture and dusty, forgotten items. Confused, the traveler returns to the front desk, only to be met with the clerk's bewildered expression. The clerk insists that room 213 doesn't exist, and that they've never issued a key to such a room. That night, as the traveler tries to sleep in another room, they begin to hear strange noises, muffled screams and frantic whispers echoing from the walls. The next morning, the room is found empty, the bed unslept in, and the traveler is nowhere to be found. The key to room 213 is mysteriously returned to the front desk. Story 2. The Endless Hallway. A couple on a cross-country road trip decides to stop at a quaint roadside motel for the night. After checking in, they're directed to their room on the second floor. As they walk down the hallway, they notice something strange. The hallway seems to stretch on endlessly, with no signs of their room. The doors they pass are all unmarked, and the light fixtures buzz with a dim, flickering glow. No matter how far they walk, the hallway continues to extend, twisting and turning in unnatural ways. Panic sets in as they realize they're trapped in a never-ending loop, with no way to find their room or return to the lobby. They start hearing distant footsteps behind them, growing closer with each passing minute. When they finally decide to try one of the unmarked doors, they discover it leads back to the same hallway, but the walls are now covered in strange symbols and the air is filled with an overwhelming sense of dread. The couple's car is later found abandoned in the motel's parking lot, but there's no sign of them anywhere. Story 3. The Phantom Guest. A small motel in the middle of nowhere gains a reputation for being haunted after several guests report seeing strange apparitions. A traveling businessman decides to stay there out of curiosity. That night, he begins to notice odd things. The television turns on and off by itself. The lights flicker, and the temperature drops suddenly. As the hours pass, the businessman hears faint voices and sees shadows moving just out of the corner of his eye. When he finally drifts off to sleep, he's awakened by the feeling of someone sitting on the edge of the bed. Turning on the light, he sees the imprints of several bodies on the bedspread, as if multiple people are lying there. The bathroom door creaks open, and in the mirror, he catches a glimpse of ghostly figures standing behind him. The next morning, he rushes to check out, only to find the lobby empty. As he drives away, he notices in the rearview mirror that his room's window is open, and the curtain is waving as if someone is watching him leave. Story 4. The Locked Door. A woman on a business trip checks into a cheap motel for the night. The room is basic but clean except for one peculiar thing, a door next to the bathroom that's locked from the other side. Thinking it's just a storage closet, she doesn't give it much thought until she starts hearing noises from behind the door. It sounds like someone or something is scratching at the door, trying to get out. Despite her growing unease, the woman tries to ignore the sounds, but they only grow louder and more persistent as the night goes on. Eventually, she gathers the courage to knock on the door, but there's no response. Suddenly, the scratching stops and an eerie silence fills the room. Just as she starts to relax, the door handle begins to jiggle violently, as if someone is trying to force it open. She flees the room and spends the night in her car. The next morning, the door is wide open, but the room beyond is empty. Just an ordinary storage closet. The woman drives away as fast as she can, vowing never to return. Story 5. The Mirror's Reflection. A young couple decides to stay at a roadside motel on their way to visit family. The room they're given has a large, ornate mirror on one wall that seems out of place in the otherwise plain decor. As the night progresses, They begin to notice something strange about the mirror. It doesn't seem to reflect the room correctly. Sometimes the reflection shows things that aren't there, like an extra chair or a shadow moving across the floor. Curiosity turns to horror when the couple realizes the mirror is showing their room as it appeared in the past, complete with previous guests who don't seem to realize they're being watched. The guests in the reflection start acting out scenes of violence and terror, as if reliving their final moments. The couple tries to leave, but finds themselves inexplicably drawn to the mirror, unable to tear their eyes away from the horrific scenes playing out before them. By morning, the couple is gone, and the room is left undisturbed, except for the mirror, which now shows a reflection of the empty, desolate motel room. Story 6. The Haunted Radio. A traveling salesman stops at a run-down motel for the night. His room is small and outdated, with an old-fashioned radio sitting on the nightstand. Curious, he turns it on, but all he can hear is static. He leaves it on as he gets ready for bed, hoping to find a station, when suddenly, the static clears and a voice comes through. The voice is faint and crackly, but it's unmistakably that of a woman pleading for help. The salesman tries to adjust the dial, but the voice grows more frantic, repeating the same message over and over. "Help me. He's coming for me." As the night goes on, the voice becomes louder and more desperate, and the salesman begins to hear other sounds: footsteps, doors slamming, and what sounds like someone sobbing. He tries to turn off the radio, but it won't shut off. Panicked, he throws it out the window, but the voice continues, now echoing through the room. The next morning, the radio is back on the nightstand, undamaged, and the salesman's car is found abandoned by the side of the road. Story 7. The Missing Manager. A family on vacation checks into a quaint, family-run motel. The manager, a friendly older woman, welcomes them and gives them the key to their room. The first night goes smoothly, but on the second night the family notices that the motel seems eerily quiet. The other guests they saw previously have all vanished, and the front desk is deserted. When they try to find the manager, they discover her office is locked, with no sign of her anywhere. As they search the motel, they start finding disturbing clues. Bloody handprints on the walls, torn clothing, and messages scratched into the paint warning them to leave. The family tries to flee, but they find that all the exits are locked and the phones are dead. They're trapped in the motel, with something unseen stalking them from the shadows. By the time help arrives, the family is nowhere to be found, and the motel has a new vacancy sign hanging outside. Story 8. The Disappearing Road. A man driving through a remote part of the country stumbles upon a motel that isn't on his map. The motel looks pristine, with perfectly manicured lawns and a glowing neon sign. The man checks in, but something feels off. He can't quite put his finger on it, but there's an unnatural stillness in the air. After settling in, he decides to go out for a walk, but when he steps outside, he realizes the road he came in on has vanished. The motel is now surrounded by dense, impenetrable woods that weren't there before. The other guests, once friendly and chatty, now seem distant and strange, their eyes glassy and their smiles forced. As night falls, the man hears strange noises outside his room, whispers, footsteps, and the rustling of leaves. He tries to find his way back to the road, but every path he takes leads him back to the motel. The next morning, the motel is gone, and the man's car is found abandoned on a dirt road with no trace of the man himself. Story 9. The Blood-Stained Carpet. A couple checks into a cheap motel for the night, looking for a place to rest after a long day of driving. The room is small and dingy, with an unsettling odor lingering in the air. They notice a large, dark stain on the carpet near the bed, but try to ignore it, thinking it's just from a previous guest's spill. However, as the night goes on, the stain seems to grow larger and darker. The couple is woken in the middle of the night by strange noises, whispers, footsteps, and what sounds like something being dragged across the floor. They turn on the lights to find the stain has spread across the entire floor. And it's not a stain. It's blood, fresh and still wet. Terrified, they try to leave, but the door won't open. The room begins to feel colder, and they start to hear faint screams coming from beneath the floor. The couple frantically searches for another way out, but the windows are sealed shut and the walls seem to close in around them. The blood continues to spread, now seeping up the walls, and the screams grow louder, more desperate. In a last-ditch effort, they break through the bathroom door, hoping to find an escape. Instead, they find themselves staring into a hidden room, where the source of the blood is revealed, a previous guest brutally murdered and left to die. The figure slowly turns its head towards them, its hollow eyes locking onto theirs, and begins crawling towards them. The couple's screams echo through the empty motel, but no one comes to help. By morning, the room is spotless, as if nothing had happened, and the motel staff goes about their day as usual. The couple's car remains parked outside, but the room is now mysteriously listed as vacant. Story 10. The Guest Book. A solo traveler looking for a place to rest finds a quaint old-fashioned motel in the middle of nowhere. The place has an odd charm with its vintage decor and cozy atmosphere. After checking in, the traveler notices a guest book on the counter, filled with entries from previous visitors. Curiously, every guest seems to have left abruptly, with unfinished sentences and odd remarks like "it's watching me and I shouldn't have stayed here." That night, the traveler begins to feel uneasy, as though they're being watched. Shadows seem to move in the corners of the room, and the walls creak with unexplained noises. When the traveler tries to leave a note in the guest book, the pen won't work, and the pages turn on their own, revealing more unsettling messages from past guests. The traveler decides to leave immediately. But as they reach the door, they realize their entry in the guest book has already been written. "I never should have opened that door." The next day, the guest book has a new entry, but the traveler is nowhere to be found. Story 11. The Voices. A man fleeing his past checks into a remote motel, hoping to find peace and quiet. He's the only guest, and the owner assures him that it's a perfect place to be alone. That night, as he lies in bed, he begins to hear voices, faint whispers coming from the walls. At first, he thinks it's just his imagination, but the voices grow louder and more distinct. They seem to be having a conversation about him, recounting his deepest secrets and fears. The man tries to drown out the voices, but they only become more insistent, now accusing him of terrible things he's done. When he confronts the motel owner, the man just smiles and says, "You can't escape what's inside your own head." The voices turn into screams, and the man is driven to the brink of madness. By morning, he's found in his room, clutching his head and muttering to himself, unable to distinguish between reality and the horrors in his mind. Story 12. The Room That Changes. A couple celebrating their anniversary checks into a charming historic motel. Their room is beautiful, with antique furniture and a stunning view of the surrounding countryside. The couple falls asleep content, but when they wake up, something is different. The room seems older, more decrepit, with peeling wallpaper and broken furniture. Confused, they ask the front desk what happened, but the clerk insists the room has always been that way. As the days pass, the room continues to change. Every night, it becomes more dilapidated, as if it's aging rapidly. The couple tries to leave, but every attempt brings them back to the same room. Finally, they discover an old photograph of the motel, showing their room as it once was, over 100 years ago. The couple realizes they're trapped in a place that's falling apart, and there's no way out as the room slowly decays around them. Story 13. The Doppelganger. A young woman checks into a motel late at night after a long drive. She's exhausted and just wants to sleep. But as she's settling in, there's a knock at the door. When she opens it, she's shocked to see someone who looks exactly like her standing there, wearing the same clothes and even holding the same bag. The doppelganger smiles eerily and says, "You should never have come here." Terrified, the woman slams the door shut, but the doppelganger begins to appear everywhere. In the bathroom mirror, outside the window, even on the TV screen. The motel staff insists there's no one else staying there who matches her description. As the doppelganger's appearances become more frequent, the woman starts to lose her grip on reality. She begins to wonder if she's the real one or if she's been replaced. In a final confrontation, the doppelganger tells her only one of us can leave. The next morning, only one woman checks out, but it's unclear which one. Story 14. The Room Without a View. A business traveler checks into a motel where all the rooms boast of spectacular views. When he's given his room key, he notices something strange. The window is completely bricked up. Frustrated, he asks for another room, but the clerk insists this is the only one available. That night, strange noises emanate from behind the bricked-up window, as if something is trying to break through. As the traveler tries to sleep, he hears scratching and tapping, followed by faint whispers. When he finally gets up to investigate, he notices the bricks are beginning to crack, and something dark is oozing through the gaps. The traveler tries to flee, but the door won't open, and the noises behind the wall grow louder, more frantic. By morning, the traveler is gone, and the window is sealed once again, leaving no trace of what happened in the night. Story 15. The Endless Checking. A man driving late at night decides to stop at a motel he's never seen before. The place is completely deserted, but the front door is unlocked and the lights are on. When he rings the bell, an old man appears and offers him a room. As the man fills out the check, in form, he notices it's endless. No matter how much he writes, there's always more space to fill. Hours pass, and the man is still writing, unable to stop. The old man watches silently, his smile growing wider as the hours drag on. The man's hand starts to cramp, but he can't let go of the pen. It's as if the paper is absorbing his very life. The next morning, the desk is empty, and the check. In form is blank, waiting for the next guest. Story 16. The Motel That Appeared. A group of friends on a road trip runs out of gas in the middle of nowhere. As they start to panic, a motel suddenly appears on the horizon, despite there being no sign of it moments before. Relieved, they check in, but something feels off. The staff is overly friendly, almost desperate to keep them there. As the night progresses, the friends start noticing strange things, objects moving on their own, doors that lock by themselves, and the constant feeling of being watched. When they try to leave, they find the motel surrounded by endless darkness with no roads leading away. They're trapped in a place that shouldn't exist, with no way out. As they search for an escape, they realize the motel is alive, feeding off their fear. By morning, the motel has vanished, leaving no trace of the friends who were last seen entering its doors. Story 17. The Abandoned Wing. A couple traveling through a remote area checks into a motel that looks charming but is oddly empty. The clerk warns them not to go into the West Wing, which is under renovation. However, the couple can't resist their curiosity and decides to explore. Inside the West Wing, they find rooms that look like they've been abandoned for years, with dust-covered furniture, old luggage, and personal belongings left behind. As they explore further, they start finding more disturbing things. Bloody handprints, shattered mirrors, and strange symbols drawn on the walls. They hear voices calling their names and see shadows moving out of the corner of their eyes. When they try to leave, they discover the door to the West Wing has disappeared, trapping them inside. The motel's dark secrets begin to unravel, and the couple realizes they're not alone. They're surrounded by the ghosts of those who never left. Story 18. The Inescapable Room. A man driving through a stormy night finds a motel that offers refuge from the weather. He checks in, grateful for the shelter, but as soon as he enters his room, he feels a sense of overwhelming dread. The walls seem to close in on him, and the air becomes thick and suffocating. When he tries to leave, the door won't budge. He pounds on the walls, screams for help, but no one hears him. The room's temperature drops, and he sees his breath misting in front of him. The television turns on by itself, showing static at first, then images of the man himself, sitting on the bed looking terrified. The images on the screen start to change, showing the man in various states of panic and distress, as if the room is predicting his future. By the time help arrives, the room is empty, and the man's car is still parked outside, untouched. Story 19. The reflection. A woman fleeing her past checks into a secluded motel, hoping to start anew. She's given a room with a large mirror that dominates one wall. As she settles in, she notices something odd. The reflection in the mirror doesn't quite match the room. Objects in the mirror are slightly out of place, and her reflection seems to move independently. At first, she dismisses it as stress, but as the night goes on, the mirror starts showing her things she doesn't want to see. Images of her past mistakes, the people she's hurt, and the life she's tried to leave behind. Her reflection becomes more menacing, smiling when she's not, moving when she's still. Eventually, the reflection steps out of the mirror, taking her place in the real world while she's trapped inside, forced to watch her life play out from the other side of the glass. Story 20. The Last Stop. A man driving cross-country decides to stay at a strange old motel he stumbles upon late at night. The sign outside flickers ominously, and the place looks like it hasn't seen visitors in years. The clerk is unusually eager to check him in, and the man quickly falls asleep, exhausted from his journey. He wakes up in the middle of the night to a strange noise, a low, constant humming coming from somewhere deep within the motel. As he investigates, he finds that all the other rooms are empty, but the humming grows louder the closer he gets to the basement. In the basement, he discovers a room full of old radios, all tuned to different stations, broadcasting eerie, nonsensical messages. As he tries to leave, the humming becomes unbearable, and the man realizes the motel is feeding off his energy. By dawn, the motel has absorbed him completely, and the sign outside glows brighter, ready to lure in its next victim.